Well, good evening. So I thought what would be most fun to talk about from all the events that have taken place in the 55 years that I've been in the Squaw Valley is about years when snow was the thing that really was being focused on. What we don't seem to see a lot of right now. So here we go with a few little quips about snow from the past. April 1st, 1958, April Fool's Day. A 6-foot storm driving from Squaw Valley to Tahoe City in the afternoon in a blizzard, and pow, right in front of the old Deer Park Lodge, which is now River Ranch. My car and 2 others were stopped by a slow, wet avalanche coming from the left, from the uphill side. Out I went on the passenger side as the driver's side was buried under an 8-foot wall. Caught with me was a highway patrolman in another car and a woman who was on her way to the hospital to have a baby. So, in we went into the old Deer Park Lodge where the Calhouns, and you certainly know Alice Calhoun, her mother and father operated the old Deer Park Lodge, and she welcomed us in, and between Jean Calhoun and the highway patrolman, the baby was born and all was well. So that was the end of that marvelous day.
Who was the baby?
19, I don't even remember. I can't remember the kid's name. So we'll skip from 1958 just for a year to 1959, when everybody was making great preparations for the Olympics. And one of the preparations that was being done is to try to make everything snow safe, which we see every day, the hand charges being thrown all over the mountain. But in those days, they hadn't developed good hand charges. What was used, which started first in Alta, Utah, and came here shortly after that, was 75 millimeter recoilless rifles. And the mountain was shot down from various angles. And one of the platforms that was set up, and by the way, the 2 people that operated that avalanche service was Monty Atwater and Norm Wilson. I don't know if you people know either of them or remember them, but they were great, great characters. So they were busy setting up, and this was in February, a year before the Olympics, setting up one of the platforms, which was on the area that we now call Broken Arrow, down in the lower part of Broken Arrow, and it was aimed towards KT. And they were going to shoot KT, the saddle, and all that area across there from that point. But they weren't quite zeroed in, as they call it in the gun business. But it was still something that they thought was fairly accurate. So they let off some shots, and they looked, and they looked, and they looked. And they were shooting at Chute 75, which you all know where that is. And lo and behold, they missed completely. And where did the shots go? Nobody really knew. Then all of a sudden, through the wireless, came back the word, they overshot KT, and the shot landed in Tahoe City and blew up a lumber pile in Tahoe City in lumber. This is all facts. When the newspaper came out the next day, the headlines read, "Squaw Valley is at war with Tahoe City." So Monty Atwater went into Tahoe City, apologized to the lumberyard, apologized to the newspaper, and said, "Please don't write that article. That's not what we were trying to do." So it took a while before we got off of the medieval cannons to shoot down the avalanches and went on to things that were a little bit more civilized, but not too civilized. Then after the Olympics, lots of fun things went on, but one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is that dear old Alex Cushing was a movie star for a short 3 days. He made a commercial in Squaw Valley called the Ballantine Man. Now, those of you that have not been back east wouldn't know about Ballantine Ale, but a very famous beer. So Ballantine came to Squaw Valley, and they wanted Alex to be the Ballantine Man. And they also needed somebody to do some stunt work, which we didn't quite know what it was going to be at that point, but I got elected to be the stunt man, help him set up the cameras, and even more importantly, help Alex ski well in front of the camera. And that was a chore, because if you don't know, Alex never made a parallel turn in his life. He made Stem Christie's till the day he died, just about, which is okay. So we picked out terrain and down the men's downhill course, about the area where we call Times Square right now, skiing in sort of those rolling gullies There was some really good snow, so we shot in there and it came out quite well. Then what they wanted next was even more fun. They wanted me to take a group on a picnic to the top of the jig-back tram, the old lift that most of you have never ridden, that was above on the face of Headwall. And halfway up the tram, one of us had a case of beer sitting beside us instead of another person. And the case of beer fell out of the tram, which was going to ruin the picnic completely. Dropped down in the snow, and then I had to, and if you guys know how far the tram was off the snow, I had to jump off the tram, do a tip drop, go down, land in the snow, and theoretically turn below the case of beer and catch it and save the day. Of course, it was filmed in pieces, and we had to dig a hole in the ground and fill it with boxes and put snow over the top of it, and that's what I jumped on because I would not jump from 45 feet up onto hard snow. So I jumped and landed in that hole, and it was great fun. And the whole event came out to really make a very good commercial, but here comes the really interesting part. They give residuals, which is something I didn't know about. So every time you get into a commercial like that, you get X number of dollars. At the end of it, I made $9,500 for 3 days' work. And Alex made $90,000 for 3 days' work. He did say thank you, by the way. It took a bit, but he did say thank you. Okay, that's, this just the sort of thing. If you guys get tired of listening to this stuff, I'm not going to talk about any of the interaction in Squaw Valley, about things that were written in books about who slept with who and who skied faster than who, and all of that sort of stuff. That's all left up for the... We all know who slept with who. It was a really quiet valley, and there was a bunch of people that lived up on the hill that in this little sort of subdivision that first started Squaw Valley. And when it got really cold and some of the houses didn't have really good heat, I guess from what I understand, some of the couples moved over to other houses.
They all ended up here.
They did. The Lee Bakers and all of them. Yeah, I guess they did. Anyway, March 1969, 10 years later. A never-ending storm, like we had lots of in those days, put down 4 feet, and KT was opened as the storm continued on. So, being a powder hound, like a lot of us are, I headed up KT, and everybody was shooting west face and, hitting that line. So I cut really sharp right and went over to the third west face right underneath the Red Rocks, if you guys know where that is, and said, this is my line. Little did I know, the ski patrol had not shot that side. So I made 3 turns, and the whole thing went. And I will tell you, it was very scary. I went all the way down the third west face, across Times Square. Are you guys ready for this? I was under the snow. It was black as the ace of spades. I was shot out into space over Squaw Creek and landed on the opposite side of Squaw Creek. And that was the end of my day. I lost a pole, and I lived from it, and thank you very much. The world champion woman, who was Tamara McKinney, who I coached when she was younger. But out of that little group of small children also came a new type of skiing competition, which was called free skiing. Free skiing, those of you that don't know what it is, amounts to, I'm going to start from there, and I'm going to come to here, and I'm going to do it better, faster, and wilder than anybody else. Free skiing was started pretty basically here at Squaw Valley when a couple of people decided that the line that the tram goes up eventually had to be skied. Well, I won't mention who skied it first, but there were some people that did ski those lines, and I happened to be one of them later on. But also among the group of little children that I had the joy of coaching were 2 that became the world's best free skiers. One of them is still living and lives in Crested Butte, Colorado, and her name is Wendy Fisher. And Wendy is a sparkle. The other one, of course, was Shane McConkey. Shane was like a son to me. His father was far away. His mother was not too close. And he traveled with me to ski races. He traveled with me to some of his free skiing events. And he was the first one to say, "I like to fly." When he skied behind me off the cornice, coming off the top of the backside of the exhibition, down towards what is now another chairlift on that side. We skied off that cornice and he jumped about 50 or 60 feet and he says, "That's where I'm at." And he is, and he will be forever.